Takeru is a spineless loser who is despised for being the captain of the most worthless squad in the Anti-Magic Academy. However, everything changes when he activates the most powerful magic relic and uses it to clap every witch he can find. It all starts with Takeru's goal of getting paid to fight witches. This is because he needs to pay off the debt his parents racked up at the milk store. He heads to the 35th test platoon where his eyes are assaulted by Usagi in a bunny costume, showing him where Easter eggs come from. Takeru sheds a tear for his intact virginity, causing Usagi to attack him for looking at her with pity. While Takeru struggles with the eclipse blocking his vision, Ikaruga takes some pictures of them to sell on the dark web. Usagi immediately rushes to delete the pictures, while Takeru wonders why his life sucks harder than a Tyler Perry movie. Meanwhile, a rebel named Aoka gets scolded by the chairman of the academy, Sugetsu, for taking a life. As punishment, Oka gets disbarred from being an inquisitor and transferred into the 35th test platoon. Back in the office, Usagi tells Takeru that their platoon has managed to score 0 points in 6 months, which is more disgraceful than your incognito browser history. Takeru apologizes for being a useless team captain and laments not being cut out for the job. At this, Ikaruga searches her system for a mission they can handle and informs them of an illegal trade going down that night. Takeru and Usagi get excited by the news when Sugetsu suddenly shows up with news of his own. They wonder what he's doing in the slums of the academy, so Sugetsu explains that despite their record-breaking failure rate, he's actually kind of rooting for them. He then introduces Aoka as their newest skilled member, making Takeru freeze in place. Usagi points out that Aoka used to be a prodigy who became an inquisitor in middle school. When she sees Takeru's face, she asks if he knows her, so Takeru explains that they used to be classmates. Ikaruga asks why Aoka quit being an inquisitor to join them, but Aoka rudely claims that she can't reveal why. At this, Sugetsu quickly exits the room before he chokes on awkwardness. After, Takeru asks Aoka how she's been since the last time they saw, but Aoka doesn't remember knowing such a loser.
Emotional damage.
Later that night, Aoka joins the team on the mission. Ikaruga explains that their target is to reclaim a magic artifact called the unorthodox stones, which makes people want to unallow themselves. Takeru and Aoka infiltrate the building while Usagi sets up her sniper rifle and informs them of the 2 targets on the 7th floor. Takeru tells Aoka to wait for his signal to charge and while he makes the first move. Inside the room, the seller offers the unorthodox stones for sale to a witch named Mary, insisting that he can handle the inquisitors with his new weapon. Meanwhile, Takeru delivers instructions for Aoka to take out the guard while Usagi snipes the people in the room. The mission begins and Aoka does her part flawlessly while Usagi takes out the targets. Takeru then charges into the room, make an arrest, but finds 5 pistols pointed at his ugly face. Takeru sadly asks Usagi if she shot into the wrong building, and when her brain finally loads, he realizes she's the Sakura of the group. Just then, Mary escapes through the window, while the other men notice that Takeru is just a student of the Anti-Magic Academy. Takeru claims that he's actually just lost and confused, but the men don't buy it. One of them points out his sword and starts mocking him for watching too much Power Rangers, causing Takeru to lose it. Ikaruga immediately tries to calm him down, but one of the men calls his sword scrap metal, and that does the trick. The man fires his gun, but Takeru uses his blade art to slow down time and slice the bullet in half. Takeru suddenly turns into a mini Sasuke and tells them to prepare to die. The men fire more bullets at him, but Takeru cuts through them and prepares to stick his sword in them when he suddenly hears his sister's voice. Takeru snaps out of it and Ikaruga admits that she had to play the sister card. Now that he's back to normal, Takeru says he was just kidding, hoping to leave unscathed. At that moment, Aoka comes through the vent and single-handedly takes out the men. When she spots the seller, she warns him not to resist, but the man grabs a paper and activates an instant magic spell. This spell summons a dragoon, one of the Inquisition's weapons, so Ikaruga tells Usagi to hurry to the sniping position. The dragoon begins firing multiple rounds, but Aoka barely breaks a sweat, as she evades them all while firing a few shots of her own. Suddenly, the dragoon stops working and Aoka reveals that she took out its weak joints, which stopped it from moving. As she restrains the seller, Takeru admits she's in a league of her own. However, when he tries to walk to her, he trips on a shell casing and lands with his hand grabbing greatness. Aoka goes speechless, so Takeru tells her not to worry since he prefers them flat and lifeless. At this, Aoka kicks the life out of his future grandchildren, causing Takeru to pass out on her chest pillows as Aoka wonders what is clinically wrong with this platoon. Some days go by and Usagi starts nagging Aoka for going off on missions alone. Aoka insists she wants no part in their platoon, so Ikaruga warns Usagi that she's wasting her time. This strikes a nerve, so Oka tells Usagi that she's a sniper under pressure while Ikaruga is a quack mechanic. As for Takeru, she tells him he's a disgrace as a captain and has no right to call himself an inquisitor. Oka storms out and Ikaruga says she lacks the ability to trust anyone else. Takeru admits that Oka is right, but they still have to find a way to work together. He comes up with a plan and later that day, they decide to throw Oka a welcome party. However, when Oka walks in, she scolds them for partying during work hours and turns to leave. Takeru notices the cut on her arm and runs after her to help. When he catches up to her, he reminds her he's her platoon captain and would never leave an injured member of his squad alone. Oka then has no choice but to bring him along. They arrive at a facility of a secret magic organization called Valhalla. Oka says Valhalla was probably part of the illegal trade too. Suddenly, Oka saves Takeru from getting blown up by a bomb, but armed guards come out to fight them. They take them down and Oka goes to search the containers while Takeru restrains the men. When Takeru goes to join her, he finds a gruesome scene of humans who were butchered to death. Oka starts to lose it, so she storms out and shoots one of the men. Takeru warns Oka that she'll lose her Inquisitor license if she keeps taking lives, but Oka insists that she'll wipe out every last witch she can find. Takeru tries to reason with her till she reveals that a witch took out her entire family and she's dedicated her life to their extinction. She then tries to shoot the men, but Takeru stops her and insists that he'll never stop trying to be her comrade. The next day, Takeru overhears students wondering why Oka would join the deadbeat platoon, but even Takeru doesn't blame them after that cringe line he said to Oka last night. Meanwhile, Sugetsu tries to convince Oka that the 35th platoon has immense potential, but Oka says she's not interested. Sugetsu then reveals that one of the members is a relic eater candidate, causing Oka to wonder how that's possible. Sugetsu reminds her that the relics choose their candidates, just like she was chosen, but Oka storms out in anger. Meanwhile, Mary meets with Haunted to deliver a magic item. Haunted says that he's taken over 50 lives just to resurrect a fallen hero, so Mary wishes she could take his life too. Haunted reminds her that Valhalla's sole focus is to abolish the prejudice against witches, but Mary simply reminds him to keep his promise. Back at the office, Usagi tells Takeru that her little hiccup on the last mission would never happen again. She then hopes to shove her rifle up Oka's south pole when Oka suddenly shows up. Takeru tries to invite her to lunch, but she ignores it and asks if he's really aiming to be an inquisitor just for money. When Takeru doesn't deny the charges, Oka says he should be ashamed of himself, but Ikaruga butts in and reveals that Oka was stripped of her rank of inquisitor. Apparently, the other inquisitors call her the Calamity. However, Oka says she doesn't mind the title and storms out again. Meanwhile, Haunted monologues about how peaceful everything has been, but he insists that peace isn't necessary for humans. He activates his magic circle and summons a warrior to usher the destruction of their era of peace. On the other hand, Takeru follows Oka to a cemetery as she visits her family's graves. Takeru asks what happened to them, forcing Oka to replay the memories of when she was possessed by a witch to murder her entire family, including her little sister. Oka admits that she now loses herself when she's faced with vicious criminals, which is why everyone calls her Calamity. Takeru tells her she's wrong, so she asks him if he can abandon his humanity to defeat his enemies. Before he can respond, they hear an explosion in the distance, which is a result of Haunted unleashing his summon and sending him to the Anti-Magic Academy. Oka heads downtown and asks the task force what's going on. The men say they aren't sure, but there are rumors that a summoned hero has appeared. At the same time, Takeru finishes slicing up ghouls as he laments how reckless Oka is for running off alone. Ikaruga radios in and plays a broadcast from Sugetsu, informing the students that the Inquisition doesn't have the manpower to take on the summoned hero, so they need all the help they can get. Ikaruga asks Takeru if the platoon should run or fight, so Takeru tells them Oka is already on her way to the academy, and since she's so blinded by hatred, his only way to get through to her is to fight the summoned hero too. At that moment, Oka finds one of the injured students who warns her that they don't stand a chance against the monster. Regardless, Oka charges in, but her bullets are useless against the warrior's barrier. Despite jumping around like a toddler who needs to pee, she gets tossed aside like a rag doll. Oka is determined not to die like an upside-down cockroach, so she has no choice but to summon her relic eater Vlad. Vlad reminds her she only has a provisional contract, so he might not grant all her demands, but he's able to heal her wound. Oka is able to move well again, so she tells Vlad to unlock her weapons and Vlad agrees. He informs her that the abomination in front of them isn't a Decepticon, but actually Arthur Pendragon bound to the body of a dragoon. Oka shoots a round that is able to pierce through its armor, but she soon realizes her shots had no effect on him. Vlad tells Oka they need to destroy Excalibur's scabbard, so Oka tells Vlad to use Hallmark magic. When Vlad asks if she's finally accepting him fully, she refuses and tells him to use her blood instead. Vlad accepts and draws her blood to activate a spell that pierces through Arthur's armor. Uka finally has an opening when Vlad suddenly powers down under the instruction of his master. Uka returns to her role as a rag doll, but before Arthur can finish her off, Takeru comes to her rescue and fends him off. Takeru tells the summon it'll have hell to pay for clapping his platoon member, so he rushes forward to attack. However, his sword was nothing more than a crayon on Arthur's armor, so Takeru asks the Ikaruga for help. She tells him that Excalibur is inside a railgun that needs to cool down after use, giving Takeru enough time to close the distance and attack. Then, Usagi was finally of use as she sniped the correct target this time, putting Arthur on the ropes. However, when he suddenly activates his hallmark magic, Ikaruga tells Takeru to get out of there, but it's too late. A large explosion goes off, leaving Takeru on the brink of death. Suddenly, Takeru appears in another dimension where a relic named Lapis announces that he has been chosen as his second contractor. She then asks him a bunch of questions so they can form a contract. When she asks if he can abandon his humanity to defeat the enemy, Takeru remembers Aka's question, and this time he says yes. At this, the contract is formed and Lapis heals all of Takeru's damages and turns him into Robocop, a witch hunter. Takeru wonders what is going on, but Lapis tells him to focus on the fight and slash through Arthur's attack. When Takeru sees his sword can't be broken, she goes all into the fight. Arthur resorts to his hallmark magic again, so Lapis tells Takeru to activate their hallmark magic too. Lapis absorbs all of Arthur's attack and uses it to power up Takeru's suit. With this, Takeru begins his dumb monologue as he cuts through Arthur in one swoop and destroys him for good. Haunted watches from afar and is impressed that they managed to defeat his summon, so he goes back to the drawing board. Meanwhile, Takeru tells Aka that he won't judge her for her quest for revenge. Instead, he offers to carry half of her burdens. Uka is touched by his offer, so Takeru tells her not to worry and collapses in her lap. The next day, Sugetsu meets with the leader of the Inquisitors, Hayato, who tells him about a captured Auroral witch who has lost all of her memories. Hayato says the Valhalla might attack to get her back, so they had to resell. There, Sugetsu finds Mary chained up and tells her she's officially enrolled in the Anti-Magic Academy. Later, Sugetsu meets with the 35th Platoon and explains that Lapis was the last relic eater to choose a host since she needed someone with close combat abilities. Unfortunately, the catch is that she likes to take human form, so Sugetsu puts her in their class so they can keep an eye on her. Usagi asks if that's why he summoned all of them, so Sugetsu says he actually has a special mission for them. Mary comes into the room, and Sugetsu informs them of their plan to allow witches to attend the academy, starting with her. The platoon is then tasked with guarding her and keeping her identity secret. After they leave, Mary tells them that she doesn't need babysitters since they had her wear a GPS collar. Takeru warns her that the collar is actually rigged to explode if she uses any magic, and asks the team what they should do. Usagi and Ikaruga vote for leaving Mary alone, but Oka insists that their mission is to guard her so they can't leave. Mary tells Aka she's being a pain in her ass, but Oka insists that she would never guard the likes of her if it wasn't for the mission. Mary gets upset and reminds Aka that even the Inquisitors use magic with their relic eaters, but Oka says they wouldn't have to if the witches didn't use magic at all. Mary then storms off while Takeru tries to calm Aka down. Later, they head to the shooting range and Oka hits the bullseye, while Mary shoots everything but the bullseye. Next in gym class, Oka once again shows off her prodigy skills, but when Mary tries, she falls down like gravity has beef with her. However, in the next class, Oka fails to answer the teacher's question while Mary gets the answer, anchoring Oka. During lunchtime, Mary taunts Aka for failing to answer a simple question, so Oka reminds her that she's as athletic as a banana peel. As the girls continue to bicker, Takeru tries to break them up, but he gets sucker punched in the face as a result. Later, Mary hands Takeru a cold drink to place on his face, while Takeru apologizes for Oka's behavior to her. Mary reminds Takeru that she's a witch, so Oka's reaction is actually normal, but Takeru insists that she's one of them now. Mary warns him not to be so trusting since she could off him in his sleep, but Takeru laughs at her attempt to be menacing when she's built like a plushie. He then asks why she wants to be an inquisitor, so she says she wants to change the world's views on magic and prove that it can help many people. She then forgets herself and starts rambling about her goals, so Takeru tells her their great plans. Mary calls him weird, but before he leaves, she asks for his name. However, after he leaves, Mary remembers a piece of her memory. At the same time, Haunted remembers the last time he saw Mary. She had accused him of breaking their deal by taking innocent lives. Then the Inquisition arrived, and though Mary tried to save them, Haunted slayed them in an instant. When backup arrived, Mary was framed for their murder, and her memory was erased. Haunted laughs as he plans to torture Mary mentally, but he also plans to take her back from the Inquisition for the sake of Valhalla. Meanwhile, Takeru was separating yet another bickering war as he tried to remind them of their mission. Uka noticed he was on a first-name basis with Mary and got jealous, so Mary decided to really rub it in. Uka got jealous and tried to fire back when Usagi told them to cut it out, and showed them a notice of the upcoming Academy mock battles. Later, Takeru looks at the tournament pairings when Kyoya from the 15th platoon asks how his platoon even has the nerve to participate. He tells Takeru they'll be facing off in round 2 if Takeru's platoon even makes it that far. After school, Takeru is surprised to find Mary waiting to go home with him. Suddenly, Uka shows up and insists that Mary is using seduction magic on Takeru again and refuses to leave him alone with her. As they head home, Uka explains that the chairman wanted Mary off campus so people wouldn't find out about the collar on her neck. No one else in the platoon had space in their home, but Uka promises to guard him against any witchy moves she tries to make. When they arrive at Takeru's apartment, the girls see a dark aura and a possessed-looking bird, causing Uka to fear for her life. Mary tells Uka to leave if she's scared, but when they arrive at the apartment, Takeru tells them to make themselves at home while he goes to finish up some work. Mary stops Uka from leaving while Hideout and his assistant continue to keep watch over Mary from a distance. Later, Takeru returns and finds Mary in a steamy post-shower moment. However, Takeru couldn't stop staring at the flatest surface he'd ever witnessed when Uka came rushing out from the bathroom, and they both landed on top of him. That night, Takeru tells Mary that she and Uka are kindred spirits despite all their high-pitched arguments. However, Mary insists that humans and witches are too different, and she's probably not the kind of person he thinks she is. The next day during the tournament, the platoon is forced on the defensive and needs someone to act as a distraction. Mary refuses to help them out, so Takeru offers to sacrifice himself as a decoy so Uka can take out the students near Usagi. The audience laughs at their joke of a battle, which gets on Mary's nerves, so Mary agrees to be the distraction while Uka takes out the guards and Usagi is able to make the winning shot. Afterward, Takeru commends the girls for their teamwork and acknowledges Mary as the MVP. Uka manages to squeeze out a compliment too, but Mary pretends to shrug it off. Suddenly, Ikaruga points out that Mary is the only flat-chester on the team except Lepus, who probably doesn't count. After, Takeru suggests checking out the tournament carnival. However, Uka stops at the chairman's office to give their report. There she finds a report on Mary which states that she was arrested for murder. Meanwhile, at the carnival, Takeru tells Mary that Usagi and Ikaruga initially didn't get along just like her and Uka. Despite what she said the night before, he felt humans and witches were just the same and Mary didn't need to isolate herself. Mary tells Takeru that she's been seeing glimpses of her memories that make her think she might have been a bad person, but Takeru promises not to shut her out no matter what. The next day, the platoon waits at the arena when Uka arrives and asks to speak to Takeru privately. The tournament continues while Uka tells Takeru what she learned about Mary. Meanwhile, Hideout leads surveillance of the arena while Sugetsu watches the show with popcorn, expecting Valhalla to show up. In the arena, the 15th platoon faces the 35th platoon, but Takeru promises to protect Mary. Earlier, Uka told him that Mary had joined Valhalla for an unknown reason. Now, even though Uka knew she was a criminal, she could tell something was off. As the 15th platoon was planning to attack, one of the girls suddenly grew tree branches, which took out Kyoya in the process. Takeru rushed to help, but it was too late and a flower bloomed with Haunted inside it. Haunted calls out to Mary and claims he's come to rescue her, but Mary can't remember who he is. Hayato orders his squad to rain bullets on Haunted, and when Sugetsu suggests they captured him instead, Hayato says it's too dangerous. When the shooting stops, Haunted sets up a magic field to keep them out. Sugetsu then says Takeru's platoon will have to handle Haunted. Meanwhile, Takeru makes sure Mary is okay when Haunted shows up. Mary hides while Takeru stays to protect her, making Haunted wonder if he's supposed to be the boyfriend. He tells Mary he loves her instead and she'll need to say it back or else he'll slay her. Takeru tells him he's clearly on acid and activates his relic heater to face him. Lepus warns Takeru that Haunted is an S-level threat, while Haunted realizes Takeru was the one who defeated Arthur. He immediately switches up and asks Haunted to let it slide this time, but Haunted refuses and charges in to strike. However, Haunted pulls out his tool and pierces into Takeru's body while he transforms into his own Power Ranger suit. Meanwhile, Uka rushes to Usagi to try and wake her up, but when Ikaruga calls her an incompetent sniper with gravity-defying chesticles, she wakes the hell up. At that moment, Sugetsu radios in to make sure they're alive, so Uka reveals that after investigating Mary's crime scene, she found a trace of magic that indicated the men were taken out by despair magic, not Aurora magic, which meant Mary's arrest was unlawful. Sugetsu asks what deal she's trying to cut, so Oka tells him her request. Meanwhile, Takeru asks Lepus if Haunted can also transform into a witch hunter, but Lepus says it's a hero transformation using a lost magical item. Haunted keeps calling out to Mary, but when she insists she doesn't know the creep, he snaps his fingers to undo the spell. Mary suddenly remembers her time at an orphanage that taught her magic was for helping people. One day, Mary found the orphanage burning, so Haunted offered to release the orphans if she cooperated with them. Mary begins to cry as she remembers all the people who died because of her, so she apologizes to Takeru for betraying his trust. Haunted tells Mary he'll let her see the kids from the orphanage if he returns to her, but Takeru tells Mary he's lying. According to Aoka's investigation, all the kids in the orphanage are already dead. Haunted insists he wasn't lying as he summons the souls of the dead children and explains that he only said he'd let her see them again. Mary begins to lose it while Haunted gets off to the sound of her screaming. While Mary breaks down, Takeru tells her the only way to atone for the deaths she caused is to use her magic to save even more lives. He assures her that if her burden is ever too much to bear, she should come to him and he'll carry half of it for her. Haunted laughs at Takeru's overused line and offers to show him what true despair is. The two Megazoids start to battle it out, and just when Takeru thinks he's got a handle on things, Haunted sends him flying. Takeru tries to charge at him again, but he gets pierced by something he can't see. Lepus gives Takeru the ability to see Haunted's power, so Haunted praises Lepus for being pretty skilled. Lepus informs Takeru she can change sword forms, so Takeru goes back in and switches between different sword types till he brings Haunted to his knees. However, Haunted pulls out a human to distract him and take him out from behind. As Mary watches, she remembers a spell her orphanage mom taught her to cast when she wants to protect someone. Mary decides that it will be the last spell she casts since the collar will take off her head. However, the attack misses Haunted, who mocks her shitty aim. Mary then prepares to get the Ned Stark treatment when Aoka shows up to inform her the collar has been disarmed thanks to her blackmailing the chairman. Aoka tells Mary this is finally her chance to prove magic could save lives and offers to buy her some time. Aoka throws an anti-magic grenade at Haunted, while she takes him on with help from Usagi. At the same time, Takeru tells Mary what to do. Mary fires all she's got, but when Haunted evades, he mocks her for being more useless than any bra she owns. However, Takeru absorbs all her magic and uses it to power up his relic eater. Haunted tells him it's useless and casts his hallmark magic, so Takeru does the same and the two relics face off. Lepus informs the inferior relic that her power is to absorb magic, so she and her host are unbeatable. Takeru finally cuts through Haunted, so Haunted asks for his name and realizes he's from a clan of demon hunters. Haunted retreats for now while Takeru collapses from exhaustion. Some days later, Usagi meets with a woman who is appalled by her terrible grades. Because of this, she insists on marrying Usagi off, which means she has 1 month left in school. Usagi tries to plead with her mom, but the woman denies being her mom because she couldn't have given birth to an ugly child. Meanwhile, the academy holds an assembly where Rema, the head of the school committee, announces a witch hunting festival. He then pulls out a currency to be used at the festival, which can be exchanged for both credit points and cash. Mary, Ikaruga, and Oka all have issues with the idea, but Takeru switches to his second personality. Later at the office, Takeru tells the group they have to enter the festival. When everyone wonders why, Ikaruga explains that Takeru is balls deep in debt and has a little sister to take care of, so he needs the money. Outside, Usagi overhears them planning for the festival, but when she remembers her mother's words, she concludes that the platoon doesn't need her anyway. Just then, the girls wonder where Usagi is, and Aoka even says they need her since she's the eyes of the team. At that, Mary asks why Usagi wears that weird headband if she doesn't like being called Bunny. Ikaruga assures them she actually likes being called that, causing Usagi to bust through the door and deny the allegations like a cheating ex. She explained that the headband was a memento from her grandma and asked them not to make fun of it. Takeru says it's actually cute, and Usagi gets all red in the face. She quickly changes the subject to the witch hunting festival when Walmart Rockley walks in and says he's the captain of the 23rd platoon. The captain suggests they form an alliance since they're at the bottom of the food chain, so Takeru eagerly agrees, making Usagi sad. When she leaves, she laments not getting enough time with her friends when she runs into Rima. Rima acts fondly toward her and asks if she's grown taller. Usagi begins to have a panic attack while Rima tells her she doesn't need to push herself any longer since she'll be with him forever. Usagi drops to her knees right as Takeru passes by and notices her. When he rushes to help her, Rima introduces himself and thanks Takeru for taking good care of her. However, he says it won't be for much longer since she's an important belonging of his. When he leaves, Takeru tries to find out what happened, but Usagi simply asks for help before passing out. Meanwhile, Oka gets approached by the student council secretary, who says the president wants to see her. They head to a secret room behind a bookcase where they find the president, Takeru, waiting. Takeru apologizes to the secretary for making her sneak around all the time, but she says she doesn't mind since she wants to be a spy. Oka wonders what they want, so Takeru asks if she knows of a witch called Mephistopheles. She's from the legend of a witch that devours human minds, but Oka doesn't believe such a witch exists. However, Takeru insists that she's real and even possessed one of her subordinates who murdered everyone else. Meanwhile, the rest of the platoon gathers around Usagi's hospital bed to make sure she's okay. Ikaruga reminds everyone that they need to get back to work, but when Takeru tries to leave, he realizes Usagi's still holding on to him, so he agrees to wait till she wakes up. However, Mary threatens to give him the unsullied treatment if he does anything creepy to her. Later, Usagi wakes up and is surprised Takeru waited with her this whole time. When she realizes they've been holding hands this whole time, she gets embarrassed, but Takeru doesn't see the big deal and says they should get going. Back at the student council hideout, Takeru brings up the executive chairman, Rima, who only transferred to their school a month ago and is already planning festivals and rising in ranks. She also points out that it's been a month since her team was attacked, which seems a bit strange. That evening, Takeru walks Usagi home and asks what the deal with Rima is. Usagi says it's not worth talking about, but Takeru insists she's not acting like herself and promises that he can help her. Frustrated, Usagi asks if he would marry her instead since Rima is her fiancée. Since she's her family's only heir, her parents plan to pimp her for money, legally. With tears in her eyes, she tells Takeru this was her last month in school. However, Takeru stops her and suggests she stay over at his place that night. Later, Usagi showers at his place, hoping to swipe her V card vigorously that night. She figures that if she gets knocked up by Takeru, Rima won't be able to marry her, and she can stay with Takeru forever. When she's done in the shower, she steps out in her towel, shocking Takeru. Takeru offers to lend her one of his shirts, but Usagi refuses it since she'll only take it off later. She ends up tripping on plot device, causing Takeru to grab her while her towel slides off.
You know what time it is? Disco time!
Usagi tells Takeru it's her first time and warns him not to embarrass her while she leans in for a kiss. At that moment, Mary, Oka, and Ikaruga walk in and can't believe their eyes. Before Takeru can explain, the girls conclude the worst, except Ikaruga, who wants to make it a three-way. After Takeru faces judgment, they sit to discuss the issue of Usagi's engagement. Usagi asks why everyone is there anyway, so Takeru explains that he invited them so they can have a strategy meeting. The plan is to improve her grades using the witch hunting festival so she doesn't have to marry. Usagi tells them they don't have to go so far for her, but they all insist that they'd miss her if she was gone. Takeru reminds her that she's not alone, causing Usagi to tears about dragging everyone down. Takeru tells her that she's saved their lives several times and they still need her, so Ikaruga says she has a plan. They meet with the 23rd platoon and Ikaruga announces their cosplay party idea. Mary is a swimsuit casual, showing that flat chest matters. Oka is a Chinese baddie with slits high enough to reach heaven. Lepus is a little creepy as usual, and Usagi has to be censored so YouTube doesn't ban us. The 23rd platoon nosebleeds at the display till Takeru steps out in his cosplay as Snape. The 23rd platoon offers to take a picture for purely holy and decent reasons, so the girls pose with Usagi for a chaotic photo. The next day, Usagi puts up the group photo in her locker and tells her granddad that she's no longer alone. Meanwhile, Oka gets worried about Rima when she finds a student painting the floor. When she asks, the girl says it was Rima's idea to decorate the school for the festival. At the same time, Rima finds Takeru and says he's excited to see their idea for the festival, since it would be Usagi's last memory. When he repeats that she belongs to him, Takeru says he wouldn't treat her like a possession if she was really precious to him. Rima asks what Takeru is to her, but when Takeru says they're comrades, Rima busts into laughter. He wonders how someone who murdered their brother could have trusted comrades, so Takeru insists he's lying. Rima assures him he's not and intends to do whatever it takes to make Usagi his. Meanwhile, Oka summons Vlad and asks him to give her an aerial view of the school. When she sees it, Vlad explains that it's a magic circle that takes over the mind, so Oka realizes she has to do something. Back in the school, Usagi runs into Rima again, who calls her a bad girl for not going home last night. Usagi says she won't do as he says anymore, but Reima reminds her that a murderer like her has nowhere to go. When he continues to taunt Usagi over her dead brother, Usagi has another panic attack and passes out. Meanwhile, the secretary reports to Nageru that Reima is definitely Mephistopheles. Again, Nageru apologizes for having her sneak around, so the secretary says she even give her life if the president commanded it. At this, Nageru apologizes for not being able to save her. Then she explains that the correct response was to say she wanted to be a spy. They both pull out their guns to have a shoot-off. At the same time, Takeru checks the office to see if Usagi's there. Mary said she hasn't seen her, so Takeru rushes to find her while Mary follows after him. Elsewhere, the secretary meets with Oka as they plan to ambush Reima. Oka busts in and tells Reima he's under arrest. Reima tries to play dumb, so Oka insists that he's really Mephistopheles, but the secretary answers instead. She reveals that the real secretary and Nageru were probably together in heaven, but before Oka can do anything, Reima places a charm on her head, allowing Mephistopheles to possess her body. At that moment, Mary's collar goes off, so she informs Takeru that something weird is going on. Just then, Takeru gets a call from Nageru, who was saved thanks to a bulletproof vest. Nageru warns him that Oka is in danger and asks for his platoon's help. At the same moment, Mephistopheles takes over Oka, but laments that Oka isn't completely gone since she's a relic eater owner. Mephistopheles says she'll have to activate the magic soon, so Reima laments that that wasn't the deal. Suddenly, Mephistopheles grabs his traitorous scrawny neck and warns that she could have snuffed the life out of him anytime she wanted. Without her, he would still be a bottom boy loser, so he needs to fall in line. She lets him go and assures him the academy will be his after she's gotten her body back and has her revenge. Meanwhile, Nageru tells Takeru that Mephistopheles' body is locked up in the academy, so she plans to take it back by brainwashing everyone. Takeru gets annoyed that Nageru dragged Oka into this mess. He refuses to follow her orders and is only doing this to rescue his comrade. After the call ends, Takeru summons Lapis and asks where Oka and Usagi are. Lapis isn't able to locate Oka, but she says Usagi is in the church. Takeru tells Mary to help lift the magic spell, so Mary tells him to leave it to her. Meanwhile, at the church, Usagi relives the memory of when her brother was messing around with her granddad's rifle. She tried to stop him, and it ended in a terrible accident. Later, while she visited his grave, Reima came up to her and asked what it felt like to be a murderer. When Usagi told him to stop, the little sicko slapped her and decided she now belonged to him. In the present, Usagi finds Reima creeping up on her as he announces it's their wedding night. Usagi tries to refuse him, so he slaps her and tells him to fear and obey him. Usagi lies back in acceptance when she notices the picture of the platoon and hopes they won't leave her. She pictures them calling out to her and realizes that she's no longer alone, so she fights back by biting Reima. She finally stands up for herself, but Reima transforms with his relic eater to teach her a lesson. However, before he can attack, Takeru busts through the window to fend him off. Mary runs to him relieved, so he pats her on the head and tells her she needs to help Mary. Before she leaves, Usagi tells him to beat the out of Reima for her, and if she successfully helps Mary, he'll have to pat her on the head again. At this, Usagi rips her dress and runs off while Reima goes nuttier than he already was as he faces off against Takeru. After, Ikaruga hands Usagi her granddad's rifle for the mission, along with 2 special bullets to destroy Mephistopheles' soul. Meanwhile, Mary starts to use her magic to stop the mind control spell when Alka shows up and says she is worried about her. Mary instantly calls out Mephistopheles, since Mary would never say that, so Mephistopheles simply plans to shoot her anyway. Suddenly, Usagi comes out of nowhere and pushes Mephistopheles off the roof with her. When they land, Mephistopheles quickly sticks a charm on Usagi to make all the boys fall in love with her and chase her. Back at the church, Takeru finishes up with Reima, who pees his pants out of fear and passes out. Lepus asks why Takeru didn't finish him off, so he says there are more important matters to attend to. Back on the roof, Mary gets shot in the arm by Mephistopheles, who's back to finish the job. However, Takeru shows up to protect her. Mephistopheles summons Vlad and uses one shot to disarm Takeru. Takeru has no choice but to face her with his sword, while Mephistopheles has an evil idea. Usagi arrives and Alka claims Takeru is the one with Mephistopheles, so she has to shoot him. However, Takeru tells Usagi to shoot them, both if she can't decide since they all trust her. Usagi now knows what to do, but before she takes the shot, Oka starts fighting Mephistopheles for control. She tells Usagi to shoot her, so Usagi plants a bullet in her back, releasing Mephistopheles' soul. Next, Usagi targets her soul and destroys her for good. Afterward, they run to Alka to see if she's okay. Mary finishes dispelling the magic and runs to help too, but Ikaruga shows up and checks for Oka's pulse. Once she finds it, she tells everyone she's fine, so Oka opens her eyes and tells everyone to keep it down. Some days later, Ikaruga is called into the chairman's office where he hands her a picture of a dark elf cell which was used by an organization called Alchemist to create weapons. Ikaruga claims she knows nothing about it, but Sugetsu says she was working at Alchemist as a genius researcher they created. Ikaruga still insists she knows nothing and storms out. Hideout tells Sugetsu she's definitely lying and they should force it out of her, but Sugetsu says it would be more fun to watch what she does. Meanwhile, the students check their platoon performances, and as usual, the 35th platoon has the poorest performance. Mary shows up to make fun of them, but Usagi reminds them she's part of the group of failures too. Buka and Ikaruga show up, but when Takeru asks what Ikaruga was doing, she tells him he can't handle the truth. Takeru wonders what's gotten into her, so she points out that everyone else has fallen for his carry your burden res. When the girls protest, Takeru tells them they need to focus on getting more points. Later at the office, Usagi suggests going to the border with the witches, but Mary boasts that they'll be shot down in 5 minutes. She then suggests going after the giant serpent in the sewers, but the girls say it doesn't exist. Takeru checks on Ikaruga, who says their platoon hasn't changed one bit. Takeru says it's been that way since it was just them, so Ikaruga says they sound like an old married couple. Suddenly, Ikaruga announces that she's going on a leave of absence, but refuses to tell them why. As she leaves, she tells them to do their best and says goodbye. Takeru remembers how he first met Ikaruga. His foolish pride wouldn't allow him to fight an unarmed opponent, so he got his beat like your meat every night. In the present, Takeru points out that Ikaruga never says goodbye, and Usagi agrees that she's been acting strange all day. Meanwhile, in Valhalla, Haunted meets with an emo scientist called Isuka. Haunted asks why she left Alchemy, so Isuka says they only allowed her to create what they requested. Haunted then realizes she asked him to murder all the scientists for a practical reason, and this pisses him off. He does the murdering because he loves people and their deaths, but she's sick for doing it without any emotions. Suddenly, Isuka feels a pain in her head, then she tells him she has information about the Dark Elf cell. When Haunted asks if she can trust the information, Isuka says she does, because it's from her sister. Meanwhile, Ikaruga heads downtown and suddenly disappears as the rest of the platoon watches. When they check the area, they figure Ikaruga must have gone underground and decide they have to follow after her. However, when they wonder how to locate her, Lepus shows up and offers her help. At the same time, Ikaruga tells Isuka she'll release the Dark Elf cell in exchange for watching the experiments. Ikaruga claims she only cares about resurrecting the Dark Elves, so Isuka asks why she stole the cell 4 years ago. Ikaruga claims she had to run for her life, but Isuka wasn't buying it and warned her not to get in her way again. Suddenly, some armed men showed up to retrieve Ikaruga. At the same time, the rest of the platoon was running from gunfire when they found Ikaruga unconscious with the men. Buka took the men out while Takeru rushed to grab Ikaruga and carry her to a safe spot. However, before they can rejoin the others, dragoons come out of nowhere and throw bombs in the area. Takeru gets injured and can barely stand up straight, so Ikaruga says she'll take him to a safe house. After, Ikaruga calls Izuka to explain that her test platoon got caught up in the plan. Izuka doesn't believe her, so Ikaruga warns Izuka that if any of her platoon members are murdered, she'll never get the Dark Elf cell. Meanwhile, Sugetsu calls the head of Alchemy, who explains that all the chaos was caused by one of their rogue facilities. The one apologizes and offers 150 dragumins as a token, while she begs Sugetsu to wipe out the rogue facility. After this, Sugetsu calls for all witch hunters to go to war. Back at Alchemy, the girls are locked up without any clothes on when Isuka comes to see them and reveals she's Ikaruga's sister. Isuka asks if Ikaruga is really their friend, so Usagi says she knows Ikaruga better than Izuka. Izuka says it wasn't possible, since she's a weapon built for research, and decides to tell them what kind of person Ikaruga really is. When they were kids, Ikaruga and Izuka were able to transplant human brains into griffins and do other crazy things. However, Ikaruga started asking strange questions about families and friends, thanks to a book she snuck inside. Izuka warned her to get rid of it, but Ikaruga said the facility was too cramped for her. Later, Ikaruga created an elf with no mana, so she could get kicked out. When Isuka finds out, she shows Ikaruga what happens to the researchers who fail at their job. Later, Ikaruga goes to visit the elf when it calls her mama. Ikaruga finds her cute and names her Canaria, which makes her happy. That night, Ikaruga packs her bag to escape when Isuka tries to stop her. Ikaruga suggests they run away together, when an alert goes off that the Dark Elf cell has been stolen. At this, Ikaruga tells Izuka goodbye and runs off to find Canaria. However, by the time she gets there, it's already too late. In the present, Ikaruga tells Takeru about her past before she joined the Anti-Magic Academy. Takeru says that's the first time she's ever talked about herself, so she explains she's not sure if she has a sense of right or wrong. Takeru asks what she really wants and offers to help, and when Ikaruga asks what he'd do if it was something bad, he says he'd stop her. Ikaruga says this might be goodbye for them, so she climbs on top of him and starts taking off her clothes so she can experience his special ride before it's too late. Takeru freaks out, insisting they shouldn't do it on a whim, but Ikaruga says she already planned out her 50 Shades of Grey fantasy. Suddenly, a helicopter from Alchemy flies toward them, so Ikaruga says their first time will have to wait and plants one him. She pulls out a needle as she tells him not to follow after her because she loves him. Outside, Ikaruga meets with Izuka and tells her to hold up her end of the deal or she'll make her life more unbearable than a Zack Snyder DC movie. Moments later, a car pulls up, throws the girls out of it and leaves. However, Usagi says she's heading back to rescue Ikaruga. Uka asks if she really trusts her after hearing about her past, but Usagi says she only cares about who she is now and is determined to bring her back. At this, Uka and Mary agree to help. Just then, dragoons from the Inquisition come racing past them toward Alchemy. A limo pulls up and Sugetsu gets out to inform them they're going to war. When he asks about Takeru and Ikaruga, they say they have no idea where they are, so he opens a case full of weapons they can choose from. Meanwhile, Takeru stumbles out of the building still struggling with the effects of the drug. He then tells Lapis he wants to rejoin his comrades, so she combines with him to activate the Witch Hunter suit. They head for Alchemy and begin taking down the dragoons. Lapis says Ikaruga is most likely on the top floor of the tower, so Takeru asks if Lapis can fly. Lapis says flight is impossible without wings, but she can jump high and glide. Takeru tells her how awesome she is, but Lapis says there's something weird about him raising up his tool. Meanwhile, Sugetsu casually walks through the battlefield remembering the good old days. He uses a relic eater of his own to take out multiple dragoons with just one shot. Elsewhere, Uka meets up with Takeru, who's surprised she managed to find her way there. Uka says the Inquisition will arrest Ikaruga if they find out about her past, so they need to learn the truth before then. Usagi agrees to cover them, so Takeru tells the whole platoon to move out. Inside the facility, Izuka tells Ikaruga that she remembers the hatred she felt the day Ikaruga left. She could have made so much progress if Ikaruga hadn't betrayed her. Ikaruga says she simply wanted out of a life of merely developing weapons, so Izuka asks what she found when she left. When Ikaruga says she found youth, Izuka tells her how much she lost for such a dumb pursuit. Because of Ikaruga, the higher-ups redesigned Izuka to have shooting pains in her brain whenever she felt unnecessary emotions. When Ikaruga wonders why they would do this, Izuka tells her it was all because of her damn book. Now her plan is to resurrect the Dark Elves so she can join Valhalla and escape the facility. However, Ikaruga says she actually came there to stop the resurrection of elves and to rescue Izuka. Ikaruga realizes the elf experiments would have stopped if she had taken Izuka with her 4 years ago, and asks if they can go back to old times. However, Izuka shoves her back and says she doesn't need him anymore since she intends to destroy the world. Ikaruga says she won't let her destroy her home, so Izuka shoots her in the leg and tells her to hand the dark cell over. At this, Ikaruga reveals that she's been looking at it this whole time. Ikaruga transforms into a dark elf as Izuka realizes Ikaruga must have resequenced her DNA. When Ikaruga confirms it, Izuka tells her she's even more insane than her. Ikaruga uses her mana to create antimatter and threatens to destroy every inch of the facility. Izuka plans to stop her, but Ikaruga offers to save her and undo Alchemy's design on her instead. However, before Ikaruga can reach her, Haunted shoots up like a tickled pickle and attacks Izuka. Outside, Oka and Takeru take down the dragoons when Oka notices her firepower reducing. Vlad tells her to form a contract with him if she wants more firepower, but she refuses. On the other hand, Lapis informs Takeru they only had 10 minutes worth of mana left. At the same time, Usagi and Mary continue to assist, but they're also down to 2 magazines. Back in the facility, Ikaruga watches her sister slump on the floor while Haunted gloats over the beautiful look of despair on her face. Ikaruga charges at him, and when her antimatter collides with his magic circle, a huge explosion occurs. When the dust settles, Ikaruga holds on to Izuka to get her help, but she coughs up blood and loses her dark elf form. Izuka tells her to give up and explains that Canaria is still alive and is with Valhalla. She tells her to live on as she draws her last breath. Haunted returns and tells Ikaruga to join him since Izuka already taught him everything she could. Ikaruga tells him to go to hell and shoots him in the head, so Haunted summons a special gift from Izuka in return. A dragon appears on the tower, so Takeru jumps to save Ikaruga from going splat. Lapis analyzes the dragon and tells Takeru he has a 0.4% chance of winning if he goes up against it. However, Ikaruga says it's only a machine dragon, which means it can be destroyed. Sugetsu watches from afar and wonders what Takeru will do while the dragon starts to wreak havoc. Uka makes an opening for Takeru while he charges in to fight it. At that moment, Usagi activates a rail cannon and Ikaruga tells her to aim for the flight engine, which would stop it from moving. However, Usagi only has 5 shots to do it. Usagi misses her first chance, so Ikaruga tells her to reload quickly, while Takeru continues to distract it. When she misses the next 3 shots, Takeru reminds her he's counting on her. At this, Usagi achieves full focus and takes out the flight engine, causing them to rejoice. However, the dragon doesn't go down and slams Takeru into the wall. Before it can finish him off, Uka shoots at it to stop it, but the dragon swats her away like a bug. Takeru tries to destroy the flight engine, but Lapis tells him they're out of mana and are about to shut down. At that moment, Mary reminds them she's still in this anime and shoots Takeru the rest of her mana. Takeru charges up again and is able to pierce through the flight engine. He tells Lapis to put all their juice in the next attack and cuts through the dragon's body till his suit powers down completely. At this, the dragon finally collapses and deactivates. Days later, Ikaruga informs the group of an undercover operation to recover a magical artifact. Uka suggests they prepare for the operation immediately, but Ikaruga warns that the group might not be up to the task. Uka assures her she's been on several undercover missions before, so Ikaruga tells her to knock herself out. However, it turned out they were infiltrating a nightclub, which was Uka's worst nightmare. The girls sit with some drunk, smelly men who tell them to have some drinks. Usagi says they can't drink on duty since they're cosplaying as barely legal dump trucks. The men try to talk to Uka, but she keeps her distance, so Usagi warns her about blowing their cover. Uka can't believe she fell for Ikaruga's twisted plan, so she plans to end the operation as quickly as possible. Suddenly, the man compliments her on her nice racks, causing her to cuss him out and cause a scene. Takeru steps in and apologizes since it's her first night. Then he radios the girls and tells them to leave the difficult customers to him. For some reason, Takeru is incredibly good at being a busboy, and the girls are impressed he can do something other than play with his tool. Just then, Uka notices a man with a strange package, so Takeru tells them to keep an eye on him. Uka goes to sit right next to him as he tries rizzing up a girl way out of his league. The drunk man says he has a present for the girl, but when he reaches for it, he accidentally grabs Uka's hot buns, causing her to deck him in the face. The package flies up and Uka shoots at it, causing the teen to assume they found their guy. Takeru tells them to cover Uka, so they all surround the man to place him under arrest. However, it turns out the package was just a gaming system. Suddenly, a man holding a ring freaks out and runs for it, so they run after him instead while Uka stays behind, basking in her uselessness. Back at the academy, Uka apologizes for screwing up, but Usagi says they'd all have decked him if they were in her shoes. Ikaruga says they might lose all their points if they get a penalty, making Uka feel worse. After, they examine the ring they recovered, and Ikaruga says it's made of low-grade magic and has no markings on anything significant. Even Mary can't tell what magic it's made of, which means it's another F-rank artifact that would barely fetch them 5 points. Takeru says they'll get double points if they investigate it themselves, but Uka worries if it's safe to test. Ikaruga reminds her she's the reason they have to do it, so she has no choice but to shut it. Ikaruga offers to test it herself, suggesting that the worst-case scenario is that she'll fall in love with someone. When she suggests she might squeeze Usagi's stress balls or lick Mary's flat earth, they grab the ring from her to stop it. However, the girls can't decide which one of them should test it out either. Uka tries to break the fight up when the ring flies up and lands on Takeru's finger. A bright pink light shines in the room, and when Takeru comes to, he finds Usagi rambling like a toddler who sniffed glue. She pounces on him and announces how good he smells, causing her to lick him. Takeru shoves her off and backs away when he bumps into Mary. Mary starts ranting about him cheating on her with Usagi, blaming her flat chest for the betrayal. Mary insists on proving that small mountains are mighty too, so she begins to unbutton her jacket to prove it. When she shows Takeru what's under, he quickly closes up her flat disgrace and runs for his life. Suddenly, Uka tackles him to the floor and asks him why he looks so miserable. She begins to lick him like a dog, so Takeru holds her off while he crawls out from beneath her. When he escapes, he's surprised that even Lapis has been affected. Just then, Ikaruga informs him that it was a ring of drunkenness, which surprised her. Takeru is glad to see she's still sober till she breaks the news that she's far from it. However, before she can plant one on him, She gets sick and throws up. Some days later, they head on their next mission to investigate why summer doesn't end on a particular beach. Mary says maintaining one season would be hard for a witch to pull off, while Ikaruga laments why anyone would want to make summer permanent. Takeru simply tells the girls to try and have some fun too. When they arrive at the beach, they'd find that it really is summer, and split up to search the shore. Moments later, Mary splashes around in the water while Oka scolds her for losing focus. Just then, Usagi's chest arrives and heads toward the water. However, Oka warns her to run more calmly before her melons change the flow of gravity. Ikaruga overhears Oka about the slackers, so she hands her options of bikinis to change into. Oka gets changed and claims it's all for the mission, so Mary tries to get Takeru's attention. However, Takeru focuses only on Lapis, so he doesn't awaken an ancient trouser beast. They all begin messing around on the beach except Ikaruga, who thinks she might dissolve thanks to the heat. Takeru finds Lapis watching some fishermen, so he explains that they put bait on their hooks to catch the fish. When it's time for lunch, Takeru inhales his food like it's the last meal he'll ever taste. Mary reminds them they're supposed to be on a mission, but Uka insists an army can't march on an empty stomach. After, the girls decide to grab popsicles for dessert when Takeru develops a stomach ache and runs to the bathroom. Just then, Uka notices some lifeguards with a patient who say the man was attacked by a giant monster. Lapis says it's probably a magical being called the Inviter of Summer. The girls prepare to move out when Uka says she'll sit it out because she can't swim. Ikaruga is still useless, while Takeru is dropping World War III in the toilet, so Usagi announces that the mini platoon will take care of it. Mary says she's not short enough to be mini, so the girls stare at her vacant chesticles to disagree. Lapis has an idea for capturing the monster, which involves using the girls as bait while she fishes. The monster finally shows up and proceeds to do cultured things to the girls, so Lapis asks Takeru what to do. Takeru says he needs a minute, so Lapis tells the girls to chill. However, the rope cuts, and the girls get dragged under. Finally, Takeru returns from the terrorist attack on the toilet and jumps in to save the girls. Unfortunately, his armor is too heavy underwater, so the girls scold him for being an idiot. Lapis suggests he use her form as a fishing rod, so she transforms into one and Takeru gets the hook in its mouth. The girls get free and Alka gives Mary the ability to use her magic, allowing her to blast the creature out of the water. Later, they prepare to leave when Alka hands the mini platoon popsicles for saving the day. Takeru wonders why Mary is classified as mini, but her flat chest answers the question. Some days later, Takeru visits a maximum security prison where dangerous creatures are held captive. After the security check, he waits in a room till his sister, Kaseki, arrives. Kaseki tells him he's gotten more handsome and asks if he has any stories from school. Takeru tells her about his crazy new teammates, so Kaseki asks if he's in love with Alka. Takeru says he only admires how bold she is, making Kaseki slightly sad. Kaseki says she's happy to see him grow into a wonderful person, but Takeru wonders how she could possibly be happy when she's forced to spend her life as a prisoner. Takeru tells her he wants to provide her with a normal life, when an announcement tells him his time is up. He promises to come back again, so Kaseki watches him walk away sadly. Later, the platoon goes on a mission downtown and Usagi takes out the target's car. They switch to a motorcycle, so Oka chases after them and tells them to surrender. The men use an instant spell to boost the motorcycle's speed, but Oka doesn't need magic to catch up to them thanks to Ikaruga's insane modifications. Oka signals to Takeru to take over, so he intercepts them and slashes the tire of their bikes, then captures them. When they return to school, Usagi gets excited by the number of points they earned. Ikaruga commends her on changing a lot, but she was actually talking about her increasing cup size. Uka notices the luggage under Takeru's eyes and asks if he's not sleeping. She advises him to get some rest and rely on her if he's ever having any trouble. Uka remembers his little sister and suggests he go visit her, so Takeru agrees. Later, Takeru thinks he sees the girls from the 15th platoon who haunted ripped through with his vines. However, it's actually Kyoya and Sugetsu. Takeru tries to ask him what happened to the girl, but Kyoya calls him a traitor and walks away. Back at the facility, Sugetsu and Kyoya meet with Hayato, who tells him they'd been trying to drug Kaseki for 30 hours. Sugetsu says whenever Takeru visits her, her mental vitals stabilize, which is usually helpful for them. Kaseki starts to wake up, so one of the scientists says they can't detect any mana particles. Sugetsu explains that she's actually a demon, and when her power gets released, anything it touches gets converted into a part of her. She could consume the entire planet if left unchecked. That's why they keep murdering her over and over again. Meanwhile, Kaseki starts to hallucinate about her brother walking off with another girl while she remains chained up. Suddenly, a horn grows from her head and her collar gets destroyed. causing the scientist to go on high alert. Kyoya says he's getting sick to his stomach just watching, but Sugetsu tells him to calm himself. He then warns Hayato that Kiseki has grown from 5 years ago, but Hayato says he'll risk his life to stop her. Hayato immediately heads below ground, telling all the other Inquisitors to fall back. Then he comes face to face with Kiseki as he prepares to battle her one more time, but all she cares about is seeing Takeru. Meanwhile, the 35th platoon is on another undercover mission. Mary and Usagi are dressed as Santa's little helpers, handing out Christmas cookies. No one seems to pay any attention to Mary, but Usagi sells out like cheap weed thanks to the power of Jiggle Bells. Just then a car pulls up with their target, so Oka tells the girls to place a tracker on him. Usagi tries to bait them with her free melon screening, but they ignore her like your crush ignores your existence. However, Mary is able to give them a free sample, which proves the man is probably a lolicon creep. Suddenly the target notices something's wrong and attacks, so Mary covers the girls with her shield. Uwa tries to fire back when vine creatures start sprouting from the bullets. Takeru goes after the targets, but when he reaches a dark alleyway he hears strange screaming. Kiseki walks out and says she followed the sound of his heartbeat, that she collapses in his arms, and says she always wanted him to hold her like that. Takeru notices the bodies she left behind and gets nervous, so when Oka and the girls ask what's going on, he pulls his sword on them and tells them to stay away. Uka reminds him they are not his enemies, so Takeru calms down and explains that Kiseki is extremely dangerous. However, he assures them that he'll stop his sister from harming his comrades if he has to. The girls are shocked to hear she's his sister, so Takeru explains that she's a threat level SS who broke out to see him. Back at the prison, Hayato appears from under the rubble and apologizes for letting Kiseki escape. Sugetsu tells him he did well, but they need to find her before she destroys the world. In the meantime, Sugetsu wonders what to do about the damage she left behind. Meanwhile, Kiseki wakes up and tells Takeru that she murdered people again, but Takeru tells her it's not her fault. Uka walks in and introduces herself, but Kiseki shyly hides behind Takeru and says her name. Takeru apologizes for Kiseki's lack of social skills, but Oka understands and asks him to come with her. Takeru meets with the rest of the platoon and explains that Kiseki can't control her powers and doesn't murder because she wants to. Ikaruga says that Kiseki suffers from overflow syndrome, which ordinarily can be suppressed by one of those anti-magic collars, but since Kiseki has an extraordinary amount of mana, she's like a walking natural disaster. Takeru says it's too risky to lead Kiseki outdoors, and they should hand her over to the Inquisition, so Oka suggests they escort Kiseki to the restricted zone. Takeru asks why she doesn't just call the Inquisition to send over witch hunters, so Oka says she's giving them an hour for sibling bonding. The girls agree to help, and Mary and Oka start bickering about how sweet she is, while Ikaruga jokes that she's not carrying half his burden or anything. After, the girls head to Kiseki's room to get her ready for a date with her brother. After trying on different outfits and discovering she's got bigger racks than Mary, they settle on the best outfit for the job. Later, Takeru and Kiseki have coffee together, and Kiseki is happy the girls treated her like their own little sister. She describes how sweet all of them are, though Takeru warns them about the screws they have loose. Kiseki then asks him for a favor, and when he wonders what it is, she asks him to take her life. She says that even though she's happy to pretend to be normal with him, her powers have grown even stronger than before, which means she might murder more people again. She knows she ought to die, but she only wants to die by Takeru's hands. Takeru says he wants her to live, but if a day comes when he has to take her life, that will also be the date he dies. Until then, he promises to protect her till she truly reaches her limit. At this, Kiseki promises to hang on a little longer. Meanwhile, a man named Orochi reports to his partner that the target they were supposed to rescue broke out of prison. The girl turns out to be Canaria, so she suggests they use the opportunity to destroy the academy. Orochi tells her they can't act on their own, and Valhalla has ordered them to capture Kiseki instead. At the same moment, Kiseki stares at a Ferris wheel, so Takeru suggests they go ride it. But before they can, Kyoya shows up and blocks their way. Takeru asks what he's doing there when that girl shows up again and calls Kyoya her master. Kyoya targets Kiseki, so Takeru transforms into his suit at the same time as Kyoya. Takeru is surprised Kyoya has a relic eater, and to his surprise, it's taken on the form of that girl. The boys are just about to get serious when Hayato shows up and tells them to knock it off. He tells them they'll face the consequences of fighting in a civilian area, so they power down. Takeru gets permission to talk to Kiseki and tells her he's sorry he couldn't show her more of the outside world. Kiseki then tells him not to forget his promise as she passes out in his arms. At that moment, Sugetsu appears and tells him she's been injected with a sedative. However, Takeru committed a crime by keeping her at large and is sentenced to solitary confinement. Before he leaves, Sugetsu says Alchemy will assist in suppressing Kaseki's powers, so she'll be transferred to a new facility, but Sugetsu refuses to tell him, where since Valhalla is targeting her. Meanwhile, Orochi and Canaria set out to capture Kaseki. Canaria breaks into a plane, but it turns out to be a decoy. Hayato hears about the attack on the plane, but he insists on proceeding with the operation. He tells Kyoya to prepare to move out at any moment. At this, Kyoya tells Hayato not to get in the way of his revenge against Haunted and any other heretic. Suddenly their truck gets attacked, and they're surrounded by dragoons, so they call out for their relic eaters and prepare to fight. Meanwhile, Takeru remembers when he was a kid and discovered his little sister locked in a storehouse. When he asked his dad, he told him that the females in their clan were born as demons, so it was a practice to slay their daughters as soon as they were born. However, Kaseki was born immortal, so no matter what you do to her, she doesn't die. One day, Takeru found his father injured as he explained that Kaseki got out of her cage. He told Takeru it was up to him to decide whether to slay her or protect her. After, Takeru found Kaseki on the edge of a cliff, begging for death, but Takeru said he just couldn't do it. Suddenly, the overflow around Kaseki told her to destroy everything, so Kaseki fell off a cliff, which caused the overflow to spread. When Takeru woke up, Oka apologized for getting them into this mess, but Takeru thanked her for helping him spend time with Kaseki. Uka explains that she wanted to share in his burdens because she felt indebted to him. Over the past few months, she's transformed from a grade A to only a grade C, and it's all thanks to Takeru. Uka reminds him of how he took on half her burdens, so she offers to carry half of his, reminding him he's also not alone. Just then, Nagaru shows up and busts them out of jail. She tells Takeru that the vehicle transporting Kaseki was attacked by Valhalla, so he needs to head there immediately. Outside, he finds the rest of the platoon to offer to help, so Takeru tells them he's grateful. The girls are surprised that he doesn't resist their help, so they ask Oka if something happened between them in prison. Uka simply scolds them for wasting time and says they need to move. Back on the streets, Hayato and Kyoya finish eliminating all the dragoons when Orochi shows up. Hayato tells Kyoya to escort the subject to her destination because Orochi would be too much to handle. When Kyoya leaves, Orochi warns him that he's pretty strong, so Hayato pulls out a second relic eater, making Orochi think this might get interesting. On the other hand, Kyoya realizes he has the perfect opportunity to end Kaseki, so he goes to the back and tries to take her out when Takeru shows up. Takeru asks him what Kaseki ever did to him, but he says he plans to massacre all heretics. His relic eater tells him to continue hating everyone, and she'll grant him power, so Takeru realizes it's all her doing. Takeru tries to tell Kyoya that his teammates wouldn't want this, but this triggers Kyoya, who attacks immediately. Takeru evades all his attacks and cuts through his relic eater, causing an explosion. Takeru tries to find Kaseki, but Kyoya stands up behind him and says he's not done yet. However, Oka dispels his relic eater while Usagi gets a lock on him too. Out of moves, Kyoya promises them they'll regret this and jumps into the water below. After this, Takeru rushes to Kaseki to free her, promising to create a place for her in this world. Sugetsu watches this all play out and explains that since Kaseki's powers grant her wishes, Takeru is actually the only person who can end his sister. At that moment, Kaseki's powers show Takeru's visions of all the times people tried to take her life. Kaseki tells him she tried her best, but it's time for both of them to leave this world. Suddenly, Haunted shows up and impales Takeru with his vines, and when Kaseki sees this, she loses control of her powers. Ikaruga warns the platoon that the worst has happened and tells them to regroup while Kaseki's overflow begin to ravage the city. Sugetsu is joined by the chairman of Alchemy, Suzuka, who's also not right in the head. Sugetsu tells her they've sacrificed a lot just to satisfy her curiosity, but when Suzuka offers to help clean up the mess, Sugetsu tells her their ultimate weapon will do it for them. He then suggests they bet on whether Takeru will be able to end his own sister. Meanwhile, Haunted sees why Valhalla wants Kaseki and tries not to get caught by her overflow too. Uka shows up and tells him to return Takeru, but Haunted says Takeru is his bait. Uka pulls flat out and begins to attack, so Haunted takes her on and says she's easy to deal with if he doesn't pull out his hero transformation. He stabs Uka and kicks her back, but before he can attack again, Kaseki's overflow eat him away, though he manages to survive. Just then, Uka tells Vlad to form a contract with him. Vlad reminds her that she only planned to form a contract for revenge, but Uka says she needs to protect the people fighting by her side. Vlad reveals he planned to eat her if she wanted a contract for revenge. but he's rather touched by her current reasons. Uka finally forms her contract and transforms into a Power Ranger Scarlet Witch. She returns to attack Haunted, who finally transforms into his hero suit too. They both fight it out till Uka signals Vlad to dispel Haunted's armor and sends him flying into Kaseki's outflow. After, Uka runs to grab Takeru and clears the way for Ikaruga and the girls to pick them up. As they drive away, Ikaruga is surprised at how brutal Kaseki's powers are. Uka asks how they can stop her, so Ikaruga explains that they have to keep destroying her overflowing powers till the frenzy dies down. Only Kaseki is immortal, but the stuff on the outside can be destroyed. However, there's no telling how long it would take. It could even be the end of the world. Their only chance of ending her life is if Takeru chooses to do it. Suddenly, the overflow reaches them and topples their car, so Mary forms a protective barrier while Uka tries to destroy the overflow. She transforms back into the Ranger Witch and tells Mary to take care of Takeru and the others. Uka plans to make sure Takeru doesn't have to go through what she did and end his sister, so she begins to take out the overflow with everything she's got. Meanwhile, Takeru blames himself for causing all the chaos by not being able to do anything 5 years ago. Lepus tells Takeru it's not too late and she can grant him power. Lepus tells him that she can offer him her true powers in exchange for him offering her everything. So she asks him again if he's willing to abandon his humanity to achieve his goals. At this, Takeru thinks of all the people in his life and all the time he spent with them and makes up his mind. Lapis accepts his wishes and kisses him, so she collects his soul in exchange for activating God Hunter mode. Meanwhile, Uka tires to avoid the overflow as it tells her how much Kaseki hates her for taking Takeru away. Kaseki tries to stop the overflow, but it doesn't listen to her. Uka realizes it's been a long time and she needs to go back and help the platoon. However, the overflow takes the form of flying demons and surrounds her, so Uka quickly activates her relic and blasts through them. At the same moment, Mary struggles to keep up the shield while Ikaruga hands Usagi the last of the ammunition she has. Suddenly, Takeru's new form steps out of the vehicle and destroys all the overflow in the area. Uka rejoins them, and when she sees Takeru, she suggests they all work together, but Takeru suddenly sucks out all her power and tells the girls to take care of her. Uka tells Takeru he shouldn't have to end his family with his own hands, but Takeru says he isn't fighting for only Kaseki. He apologizes to the team and says he can't walk by their side anymore, then he flies off. When he calls out for Kaseki, she feels relieved that he's finally come to end it all, but Haunted returns and tries to stop him. As they find it out, Haunted asks how he could transform into God mode to take out his own sister, so he concludes that he'll have to end Takeru there. Kaseki starts to worry about her brother, but the overflow tries to convince her that it's all his fault. Takeru admits that he wasn't able to end his sister back then, but he insists that he'll stick to his desires now and save Kaseki. The overflow objects and insists that he has to die with Kaseki, and when Kaseki tries to tell it that she doesn't want to die right now, it swallows her whole. Takeru realizes he has no time to waste, so he cuts through Haunted, causing a huge explosion. He then runs through the overflow to look for Kaseki. When he finds her, he begins to suck the magic out of her, so the overflow asks if he's just going to make her suffer again. He admits she'll have to endure it till he can find a way to save her. Then the outflow disappears. When Orochi sees this, he tells Canaria they have to retreat, so she agrees grudgingly. Sugetsu goes to see Orochi, who he hasn't seen in 150 years. Orochi asks if he's trying to use Takeru to make history repeat itself, so Sugetsu tells him no matter how they fight it, hell shall descend on them again. After, the rest of the platoon finds Takeru and asks if saved his sister. Takeru admits she's not exactly saved, so the girls tell him he can count on them to help carry half of his burden too. At this, Takeru thanks them, and they watch the sun rise on the city. If you made it to the end of this video, prove it by commenting "I think my sister is also a demon." And if you like anime recaps like this, then watch this video right here.